What sort of person decides an isometric arcade racer would be improved with licensed rock music? The best person! Rock and Roll Racing by Silicon and Synapse, who later become Blizzard, yes, that Blizzard, is a racing game in the RC Pro-Am mould that features an isometric viewpoint, and the tracks are littered with weapons and power-ups to help you get the upper hand on your fellow racers in a much more aggressive manner. The game is incredibly responsive to play, and the isometric viewpoint gives the players a nice vantage point, allowing you to see more of the track, obstacles and AI racers. Some might say the camera might need to be a little bit higher to make the horizontal straights feel like you're travelling at the same speed as the vertical straights, but it's a small inconvenience that doesn't really affect the gameplay that much. Outside of the controls, the game is very much a typical arcade racer with weapons. As we've already mentioned, the style is very reminiscent of RC Pro-Am, which is no bad thing, but it does mean that the game feels somewhat familiar. What really sets it apart is the licensed soundtrack. Licensed music is not something the Mega Drive does particularly well, thanks to the sound chip having a hard time emulating the sound of guitars, but there's something endearing about hearing bleepy renditions of Bored to Wild and Paranoid. Sadly, the game has a rather irritating commentator that interrupts the soundtrack with his quips. They're nice and clear for the Mega Drive, but they break the flow of the music, which is the game's biggest selling point.
Rip fades into last!
Thankfully, someone has seen fit to allow you to turn off the commentator, which does help remedy the situation somewhat. Graphically, Rock and Roll Racing is nothing to write home about. The tracks use some heavily contrasting colours that make it a bit of an eyesore despite some decent track design and some even better sprite work on the cars. The first area of the game in particular looks like you're racing above a sea of vomit, which can't be exactly what the developers were aiming for. So is Rock and Roll Racing a worthy addition to your SEGA racing collection? Sort of. The game controls well and boasts some pretty intense action that is soundtracked by a strangely cute selection of 16-bit rock songs. Sadly, it's not the best looking racer on the Mega Drive by a long shot, but if you can look past it, there is some pretty decent fun to be had. Just don't expect it to reinvent the wheel.